So, Congressman, maybe this move fast and break things approach might not be foolproof?
Well, look, any administration, new incoming administration, sure, if they want to enter into some kind of reduction in force, they're allowed to do that. But there's a proper and a right way to do it and a smart and a strategic way to do it. But what these guys are doing is these firings are haphazard, they're indiscriminate, they're careless, and there will be consequences, as was just pointed out by Kelly. I think this administration is making a big mistake with this. Also, along with their retirement incentive, or excuse me, resignation incentive, they're also throwing that out there, and they don't have it funded. I mean, the government's not funded through the end of September, and they're offering payments to people, and the money's not been appropriated for this purpose. So it just seems to me that they're just really trying to break things, and when in fact they could actually, if they really wanted to reduce force, there's a right way to do it, and they've gone about it all wrong.
I've got to appreciate a former House guy making the appropriations reminder there, because you're right. That's one of the reasons that people are casting doubt on whether or not that's actually a legitimate offer that the administration can even make. Putting that aside for a moment, Joyce, the workers who were let go by the administration citing poor performance when their actual reviews show the opposite, does that give them some legal standing or legal ground to come try to get their jobs back?
Well, it absolutely does. And like the congressman was suggesting, there is a way that you can do reductions in force. There's even a way that you can fire poor performing federal employees. But this is not it. This is just an irrational sort of an effort to achieve a political goal that's not tied to the work that federal employees do on behalf of the American people every day. So by taking employees who are high performing, who have years of performance evaluations that document their supervisor's satisfaction with the work that they're doing, this new program is setting up a variety of legal routes that these now former employees can take, either to restore their employment or to receive some other form of remedy. Likely what Elon Musk, Doge, the Trump administration are betting on here is the fact that the system is poorly designed and staffed to process these sort of claims on a speedy basis. And some of these employees, just given the need to pay rent and to keep food on the table, may be forced to seek employment elsewhere and give up their claims. So it's a real effort to take advantage of federal employees on top of everything else. And I think something that we would do well to keep sight on is this effort to vilify the federal workforce as people who are lazy and slow and stay at home and don't get work done, when in reality, these are the people that much of what's good and what works well in our daily lives is based on the work that they do.
Joyce, you bring up, I think, what I believe to be the most important part of this story. And Congressman, I'll put it to you, because a union representing the federal aviation workforce that lost close to 300 of its members, received termination notices over the weekend. They wrote this in part. They wrote, "These are not nameless, faceless bureaucrats. There are family, friends, and neighbors. They contribute to our communities. Many military veterans are among them. It is shameful to toss aside dedicated public servants who have chosen to work on behalf of their fellow Americans. These employees were devoted to their jobs and the safety critical mission of the FAA. This draconian action will increase the workload and place new responsibilities on a workforce that is already stretched thin." So to that point, these are real Americans with stories other Americans can relate to. But how much is that breaking through?
Well, that memo just really speaks to the careless, indiscriminate nature of these firings without any consideration for performance. And that's what's so stunning about this. I mean, and of course, there are going to be consequences, whether it's at the FAA or elsewhere or at the CDC. You know, there are going to be issues that are going to happen. We're dealing with a bird flu outbreak. There's Ebola, resurfacing again in Africa. There are all sorts of issues. And then if these things spread badly, if we have issues, they're going to know who to blame. But also, we should note that some of these firings are not indiscriminate. Some are very deliberate and intentional. Take the inspectors general were all fired for reasons. People who were trying to weed out waste, fraud, and abuse within the federal enterprise were fired indiscriminately. One of whom was a very close friend of mine, is a close friend of mine, Paul Martin at the USAID, for issuing a report citing waste, fraud, and abuse of the way they're shutting down USAID. So it's really tragic. this administration is doing to a lot of people who've been dedicated public servants, and as you point out, many of whom have long distinguished careers in the military as well.
And actually, one of those inspectors general who's part of the suit to try to get their jobs back, in an interview with me on this network, said that part of his job is trying to make sure that government is running efficiently, that there's not fraud, and that he reached out to members of DOJ and never heard back from them, trying to say, hey, I think we might actually be aligned on this. And nevertheless, we saw the way that the inspectors general were shown the door too. Joyce, I think that for a lot of this, it could end at the Supreme Court. Certainly the case over the president's power to fire officials. Could this put up more guardrails, less? Where do you see this going, especially given this court?
Right. So in contrast to what we've been talking about so far, which is the firing of people who are career civil servants, now we're talking about people who are presidential appointees, including the inspectors general. This first case that will go up to the Supreme Court, though, involves Hampton Dellinger, and he's the special counsel of the United States. It's a little bit confusing. He's not a special counsel in the sense that Jack Smith was. He's actually the special counsel for the country. He's tasked with overseeing certain kinds of fraud, waste, and mismanagement, and also with protecting whistleblowers in the federal civil service, in the government. So he, I think when he reached out to DOJ, was quite sincere. His mission is to prevent the sort of waste that they say that they are seeking. And his dismissal by the president would seem to violate the rules set down for his appointment, which say that he can only be fired for cause. But this case reaches the Supreme Court in a very early posture. The judge has issued a temporary restraining order that will keep him in place for just a couple of weeks while she begins to consider the substantive issues. I don't think we'll be able to read too much into the Supreme Court's decision here, whatever it is, and it's very likely that they will simply take a hands-off posture for now, tell the judge to do a little bit more work, and then they'll go ahead and consider the issues when there's a better developed record for the appeal.